You're listening to Moonhawk Studios Presents.
I don't know what it is, but there's always a predictable fade in the theme song there.
Well, it is canned, so you can kind of predict it.
Yeah.
Like that means it's in the original recording.
Anywho, welcome to another edition of Moonhawk Studios Presents. No guest today.
I'm sorry, I'm a failure.
I'm your host, Mac Paladin, and with me in the studio, as always, is my good friend Adam.
Hello.
Ogre's over here somewhere.
96.
Fucker.
The Galax is over here.
Yes, that is a statement.
I heard Petty Fan rummaging through some stuff.
Yay, the butchers aren't as comfortable as you thought.
And, of course, as always, in the land of the pigs, the butcher is king, Twilight Winter.
Hello.
That was your non sequitur for the week. I'm sure there will be many more to come. All right. Well, allegedly, we have a great show for you tonight, but let's start off with our usual thing, the news. Adam, what have you got?
Everything this edition a non sequitur?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Look, a distraction.
Let's see.
We should do a special sequitur edition at some point.
I suppose this is a good time to mention a special update since we have no guest. I can be a bit free about this. So for many months now, I have been dealing with a bankruptcy. I think I put in the final step last Friday. I had to go down to Tampa to do the actual arbitration. It took a few hours to do 10 minutes worth of work. So right now I'm just waiting for my discharge or whatever comes next, which is going to take about 90 to 120 days.
Oh boy.
Yeah. I'm like, oh, well, it gets done when it gets done. It's been a very, very smooth process, but then again, my situation made that very easy. So that should be a thing that'll hopefully be in the past soon enough. Outside of that, not much going on. Been dealing with a lot of fragment stuff. We just had Bandai Namco on the show again. It's like talked about Cars and Gundam.
Yay.
Thing to do, and they gave us some codes, so we'll be doling that out on Sunday and probably beyond. Still figuring that out. Let's see. We made the news again. It's like some people picked up our Frozen Bite interview on Tuesday.
Ooh.
So, yeah. I'm like, well, it helps. Well, it's not so much. I kind of directed a couple of websites into the direction that, hey, there might be some information here.
And then it lit up.
Yeah. I'm like, that often helps. Like, not all the time. Sometimes they find the news too insubstantial, but not this time. Like, I think that particular video has over 300 views now, which is the most viewed episode of the Twitch era, at least on Twitch. It's a little hard to discern all views because Fragments of Silicon episodes are on Twitch, YouTube, and TalkShoe. So
I think the all-time is still the
all-time
Oddworld.
all-time would be Tantalus. That
Oh,
had a couple
right.
Yeah, that had a couple thousand. But yeah, so it's been a good week for the program. All right, cycling forward, ogre.
Let's see. Not much has happened this week, personal-wise. So everything's okay on the Eastern Front. Oh, other side, what the shit?
Oh, damn.
It's like neither front of the war zone is safe for some reason. Someday I'll figure that out. Let's Play wise, we're currently got Metal Slug going up. We finished that like last Monday. So we're working on our quote-unquote Halloween playthrough, which should go up Sunday. It should be all kinds of fun and whatnot. Let's see. Final Fantasy XIV's going well. With
Bastard.
some lucky wins last night. By next Tuesday, I'll actually have all 340 equipment on my Paladin, which means I'll be already capped on equipment 3 months before the next equipment cap goes up. So, bully for me. I think I'm the first one in the raid group to actually make that.
Unless you need to have the 345 weapon to be 340 because weights and whatnot.
Yeah, I'm still calling crap on that idea just because of the fact that it seems to be an average of your item equipment. If you all have 340, it's supposed to be 340.
Well, we'll find out next week, won't we?
Yeah, but apparently averages never work with me anyway.
Yeah.
So outside of that, not much. I'm looking forward to Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga plus Bowser's Minions coming out this Friday. Gonna go pick that up.
Oh man.
I like that game.
Hopefully
Other than that, that's about it for me.
All right.
All right. Eddie fan.
Well, tomorrow my mom and
96.
fucker. Tomorrow my mom and sister are going to Nashville. I guess they're going on a trip to celebrate my mom's 50th birthday. So, and I guess they're just going together because, like, I had no desire to go, nor does my dad, so they can go have fun. So I'll have the upstairs all to myself. So, yay. Still been trying to look for guests for the show. Obviously not been panning out.
Persistence is key.
Next week we should be getting new phones. I don't remember if that's going to be before or after the next show. It depends when my mom and sister get back from their trip. If they decide to come home a day early, then we could be getting it earlier. Or if they just want to, loaf around for another day, then it could be later. So it depends how that works out, and not really a whole lot. Just been kind of wanting to find time to go enjoy some of the new anime this season and kind of play some games. Next victim.
All right. Galix?
Not too much exciting around here. The weather's gotten a little bit more seasonable post hurricane blow off. So it's been a little bit cooler, so that's nice. Video game wise, I've been playing a little bit for the show, and I finished Samus Returns. It took me 17 hours to finish the game, so I didn't get anything special, although I did get it 100%, so that's something. And I've been trying it in fusion mode, but fusion mode is really freaking hard because even the simplest enemies in the game take off 2/3 of an energy tank. And this is not a game that gives you a ton of energy tanks. So yeah, Not a whole lot exciting going on besides that. I mean, I guess I could regale you with tales from the Sunday Pathfinder game, but I'm sure. none of you
Anyway,
are super
Twilight
interested
Winter.
in that.
Holy shit.
No, yeah, no, it's fine.
Sorry, that was too easy.
No. It's been getting colder here, just like everywhere else. Work has introduced a new online service that'll be helpful for those who may have children or disabled, for we can gather stuff for like groceries and such, and so they can pick it up by the store without having to get out of their cars, which has been neat and causes some excitement over here. And I've also been helping my mother out with some homemaker stuff for friends. And with games, been practicing with Project Cars 2. And also got to go around to playing more of Trelon for the review this Sunday. And that'll be it for me.
Okay. Well, not a whole hell of a lot going on this week. This is the last week of 3 times a week coming up on Starship Moonhawk. Then we go down to once a week on Fridays. If we don't start getting donors soon, it'll go down to twice a month. Trying to get more readers, but kind of an odd thing happened. We were gaining for a while, and then all of a sudden it just didn't suddenly started getting to the action, and it just went. So I'm like, okay, I guess science fiction readers do not like action sequences or something.
Well, this may not be specific to your situation, but I know that when I'm reading something that has a lot of action scenes in it, I prefer to read the whole action scene at once, even if that means waiting a bit sometimes.
All right. Yeah, it's kind of interesting. The long-awaited Indiegogo Blu-ray Rhapsody episode of Peppermint Saga is finally rolling on the site, and in a complete opposite trend of Starship Moonhawk, its readership went whoop. So instead of it went. That's I know that's very descriptive, right?
Yeah, that always the best commentary from you, Mac.
Well, we could talk about gun control. We may yet get to that.
Yeah, let's save that for last news desk, friend.
Yeah. Actually, according to my investigation right now, views have actually gone up. Readers have actually gone up 2 since the last time I checked. So on Starship Moonhawk, but Ship in a Bottle is still trending upward, as is Peppermint Saga Blue-Gray Rhapsody, which is now at 173 from a low of 75. That's not too shabby.
Progress.
Well, it's significant because I've put the widget for the Indiegogo campaign back up because we have 3 new episodes to finance. Also, as I mentioned last week, Shingle is still out. I've increased the total number of slots to 10. So need $600 in a hurry. But here's the deal. You can only get 1 of those slots per person because they're a discounted rate. So if you want a second slot, it is $100. Trying to make it fair for everybody. I just posted the listing on DeviantArt today. So we'll see if that gets any bites. Checking for notes as we speak. I'm not expecting much right away anyway. It's one of those things that it'll take time, and I'll probably have to flog it repeatedly before I get any hits on it. But in the meantime, it may get people to my page, which I'm about to start updating. I'm in moderation hell at this one place that allegedly has standards. So that's always annoying. I wonder. I should probably just close my account and start up a new one with a similar name but not quite the same, and re-upload all the artwork and see if they notice. Because fuck those guys at Hentai Foundry. Yeah, I don't know. It's really kind of obnoxious. I also ran into another odd thing. You want to talk about plateauing on social media? I had a 1,200 friend gain on Facebook since March, and now I go up 1 and 2 drop off, and then I go up 5 and 4 drop off, and it's just weird. I can't seem to break 1,400. And honestly, the suggestions that they're giving me are pretty weak sauce anyway. So it's like I'm at the point where I've far exceeded the tertiary circles of people that I actually know. So it's like, all right, I'm gonna go to my friends, and all of their friends that I believe should be mutual friends, I'm gonna go friend them, and then I'm gonna go to their friends, and if we have other mutual friends overlapping, then I will seek them out. And it's just like, you got a bunch of people that, shall we say, were flag-waving conservatards and didn't announce themselves. How inconvenient. Had to put up with their blather, and I mean, it was literally like all of the worst cartoon shit that you can think of that you've seen in the media on Twitter and all that stuff. These folks decided to jump on that bandwagon, and I'm like, oh, thank you for outing yourself as a Nazi, unfriend.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I wish you had done that before. Would've
Like
made
these
things a
people
lot
who are
more
saying we should be nice to Trump, but if you scroll up on their wall a few years ago, they have the burning effigy of President Obama.
pretty much. I mean, just give the president a chance. And it's like, yeah, because you did such a great job on that with the previous president. I'll go with fuck you and die. So that's what's going on there. Not much else to say. I mean, I'm still working on some novels and stuff like that. Just kind of a blah week. Just resting and trying to get my act together. I did a shockingly good job last month of scrambling together enough money, and now I actually have more in the bank than I thought I should have. That's always alarming.
Still
But
better than the alternative.
Well, I did actually manage to make my payments, so I was like, holy shit.
I'm not homeless this day.
Maybe next week. Yeah, well, starting next month, my new lease kicks in. So now we get this weird thing where I have a base rent and a utility bill, which I did not have before.
Oh boy.
Did the base rent at least go down?
Not really. I mean, because before the water and trash was included, now it's a separate billing. It's just some fucking way for them to squeeze more money out of us. See, we're on the boiler system. So what they've done is they've switched us to an allocation. So basically, I'm sharing the water with everybody in the complex. So if everybody in the complex, has a brain aneurysm in the shower and leaves it running for 4 days, I get to share in that payment.
Ah.
Yeah, because there's only 1 meter for the whole complex, so they're averaging it out to everybody. And then there's a fixed. Yeah, and then there's a fixed cost. But they're like, oh, but don't worry about it. People's average electric bills have gone down. And I said, yeah, but you're basically giving me a net increase of $25 a month. And I was already skating by as it was. So thanks a lot for that, dick faces. So not exactly thrilled about that, but what WTFE, I'll manage somehow. I've done it all along. And other things. So yeah, how about them guns, huh?
Oh, you mean all the ones that we don't need?
Yeah.
Literally?
Well, no guests this week, so may as well shoot ourselves in the foot, right?
Literally or metaphorically?
Yes. You asked for that one.
What can really be said, though? I mean,
I think it's really disturbing that there are a lot of people that think this kind of thing happening on a regular basis is a worthwhile price to pay for gigantic, enormous air quotes freedom.
Bill O'Reilly
That's
can go fuck himself with a rusty letter opener with nails through it.
Adam,
it's like
Adam?
I wonder how many of those people actually believe that bullshit, or they're just acting as the NRA's mouthpiece.
well, I think you kind of nailed it on the head right there. I think a lot of the people, we'll use one of their terms against them. We'll say the sheeple in this particular situation are really unaware of the fact that they are being told what to do by the moneyed interests. This is one thing where I actually thoroughly agree with Bernie Sanders that economics is actually the problem, because
I'm like, Bernie Sanders isn't exactly the best paragon when it comes to guns, because guess what? Him being from rural Vermont, he's actually quite the gun advocate.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying in general, if you want to look at the problems of this country, you follow the money. And all of this stuff about guns is just a smokescreen for something else, which is somebody else making money off of death. And so when you look at it,
I'm like, that's part of it. But as someone who lives in the South, let me tell you, gun culture is a thing that actually exists.
I'm not
Midwest
denying
too.
that, but why did it rise up in the first place? Somebody was telling somebody they needed to have guns to protect themselves against a government that may or may not actually come for them. So there's somebody always stoking the fire, making money off of something.
Right. Well, if it's not the government, it's some minority.
Mhm.
Like,
I agree
Blacks
with
are
that. I'm
coming
not
to
saying-
take your
I never
freedom.
said-
Ooh.
I didn't say that the government was advocating this. I'm saying somebody told somebody that the government was going to do something. And so they're like, well, I can't let them take my guns, so I better go buy more of them in case they come for them, which is the sort of mentality of it. Now, there's people who just collect things because they collect things and guns happen to be their fetish. But
about that's kind of what's actually going on here, because statistically, like, gun ownership has been on a downward spiral, but there are more guns in circulation than ever. So
Right.
what you have here is basically the gun version of consolidation. More guns in the hands of fewer people. But I suppose that's not the big problem. It's more the accessibility to guns.
Yeah. Like, literally, I could go walk down to the local pawn shop and I could get a gun in 3 days.
Yeah.
Very few questions asked.
I live in a state where there are a lot of guns too, a lot of gun owners and a lot of people who like hunting and just sport shooting, but it's generally mostly rifles and stuff. And I think,
yeah, so gun control and gun control opinions are actually kind of varied. It's like the farther north and east you go, the more in favor of restricting guns happens, especially in cities. Like, our toughest gun laws are in cities like Chicago, Washington D.C., and New York. Like, and obviously that's for a lot of reasons. The rural recreation excuses don't really apply to an urban landscape.
Yeah.
Now, do they?
Like, literally, if you live in a city, you have no reason to own an M16. Zero.
yeah.
But the further south and west you go, well, look at Nevada. They have some of the loosest gun laws in the country, and that's actually a problem because guns get smuggled from the loose areas to the tight areas and beyond, like international smuggling, like Mexico.
Well, that's the big problem in Detroit. Detroit has great gun laws. It's just that like 2 minutes south of Detroit, you're in a different state where they don't.
Yeah.
Well, and that's another thing when you talk about following the money is that enforcement is highly subjective for some reason.
Mhm.
We can probably label a few different things, not the least of which is racism. But somebody's telling somebody to selectively enforce things, and that's not really helping us either. I mean, most people don't even know what the gun laws of the United States are from municipality to municipality. So they call for more regulation or less regulation or whatever, depending on which side of the spectrum you're on, and they don't even know what's being regulated or not.
I think a lot of them don't care about anything aside from their own particular interpretation of the Second Amendment, which is as liberal as possible.
I always liked the piece they did on the Daily Show about that when John Oliver was still there with Jon Stewart. It was pretty funny. He's like, I forget the analogy he's seeing the guy with, but it was pretty fucking hilarious.
Well, and the other thing is any Wild West analogies that get made are entirely hilarious because in the Wild West, a lot of towns had laws about when you get to town, check your gun with the sheriff. You can have it back when you leave.
Mhm.
Yeah, there's no such beast in Arizona, I can assure you of that.
Tombstone.
Well, I'm not talking about now. I'm talking about like back in the Wild West days.
Yeah, it's like
like-
Wild West, like Tombstone, the OK Corral. That was over that very thing. Like, Wyatt Earp and company were going to take the guns away from the cowboys, and they objected, so they had a shootout. Like Wild West gun laws were actually shockingly tight to the modern, like the current conceptualization of guns is a very modern one. Like,
Well, first off, there wasn't such a thing as automatic weapons until
no,
after that point.
The Gatling was invented during the Civil War in 1864.
Yeah.
that's still well after the founding fathers era.
Yeah.
And
There was a pitch gun, I think, that was available in Asia in the 1830s.
But it was
There were some
unreliable as
guns that
hell.
could fire fast, but they were not as fast or reliable or deadly as the
Yeah.
ones we have now.
Back in those
Right.
days, fast usually meant extremely inaccurate.
Well, that's why you sprayed people with bullets,
Yeah.
so you could, that's the general idea.
And those bump stock things apparently are pretty terrible for like accuracy and pretty much everything except for number of bullets hurled in a general direction in an amount of time.
Mhm.
I mean, and you got things like Congress. I think they delayed the vote because obviously, but
Yeah.
They want to lift restrictions on fucking silencers. Why the fuck do
Like,
you need?
that's-
Yeah, because people don't want to be alerted to why people are dropping around them like flies.
Yeah, like I can see vaguely for like, fairly decent rifles if you live out in the middle of nowhere and coyotes are an issue.
You know what guns you put silencers on?
Pistols.
Handguns.
Yeah.
You don't put silencers on rifles or even assault weapons. That's handgun shit.
Yeah.
I'm like,
But no, my sniper rifle needs a silencer so you can't hear me fire when I shoot from like 10 blocks away. Oh, wait.
Well, I
Yeah.
think it's not just silencers; it's just suppressors, which they do make like suppressors for automatic weapons.
Great. So if I want to stick a potato on the end of my gun and muffle the blast,
Yeah.
I'm perfectly okay now.
It muffles the suppressors muffles the blast and the muzzle flash, so it's hard to find where you're at.
And then you have a bloody fucking mess that you can't even make into French fries.
I'm like,
Trying to keep it light here, folks. Trying to keep it
Yeah.
light.
well, it's like, this isn't a light subject.
Yeah.
I'm like, I mean, we're in the fucking cycle same as it ever was, and it's like things are not going to change until people fucking vote these motherfuckers out of power.
Yeah.
And that may be a very tall order because the NRA is not just very moneyed, very powerful, but very organized. They their greatest power isn't in their donations. Like, they don't spend that much on donations. It's their rabble rousing ability. It's their ability to summon up, voters to make sure that pro-gun things happen. And until gun control advocates start showing up in the at the polls in greater numbers, you're not going to see that significant of a shift. Like, this is kind of why they said, we've kind of collectively agreed to let this happen. It's like, unless you make the people in power afraid of losing their position over these positions, change, because they don't give a shit about you. They give a shit about staying in power, and they stay in power by catering to the gun lobby.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean,
well, and the gun lobby is in turn funded by gun manufacturers.
Right, because if you're talking to actual, gun owners, like, they favor shit like background checks, and they don't want, the mentally troubled to have weapons, because, some common sense will tell you that, people who are suicidally depressed tend to use guns to commit suicide.
And or have, anger issues. Opposite side of the spectrum.
It's like, that's just an example. Like, it's like, people who have mental issues, obviously shouldn't have guns. But, the Republicans, motherfuckers that they are, overturned, a provision this year. It's one of those things you probably didn't notice, because we're talking about, how do I put this? The less emotionally charged portion of gun violence. Because the mass shootings, they get all the attention, they get all the raw emotion. They're an infinitesimal part of actual gun deaths.
Yeah, they're the big dramatic stuff, but they don't add up compared to suicides and accidents and crimes of passion and stuff like that.
Right, the more mundane stuff that's, garners maybe local headlines, if that, but, statistically account for, the lion's share of gun deaths. And the excuses for owning a gun get ever more ridiculous. Like, there are motherfuckers out there who have been who said that, who actually believe that, the good guys with the gun can stop the bad guys with the gun. No,
that was proven bullshit earlier this week.
Among other things, it's like, you don't want people firing indiscriminately.
Yeah.
It's like,
I don't know if it can get more ridiculous than the basic premise that a lot of people use to justify their ownership of big, heavy guns, which is that if they own big enough and heavy enough guns, then when the government comes to take their guns, they'll be able to fight them off.
Yeah, I'm like, guess what? The government has missiles and flamethrowers and, weapons well beyond even, your fucking AK.
Yeah. Drones that can be well out of your line of sight but can mow you down in less than a second.
Wire-guided missiles or radar-guided missiles or, just generally missiles that don't require line of sight.
Yeah.
It's also, gun sales have been through the floor this year. Outside of, I think that, gun sales do see a spike after one of these tragedies, because the pro-gun people, get afraid that, gun legislation is coming or whatever. I'm like,
but just think, if there had been a dedicated sniper rifle enthusiast with their rifle at that concert, they could have taken out the guy in the window.
There is no way logistically that would have happened.
I know.
Especially at that angle, he would have broke his fucking shoulder if he didn't get mowed down with them.
I apologize for not being able to massive sarcasm quotes with my voice that well over Skype.
Oh, and, if any of these fucking cowboys want to try this in real life, you know what's also going to happen? The police are going to shoot you.
Yes.
They're going to shoot you dead because you're brandishing a weapon,
at a crime scene.
Yeah, in an active situation. Like,
Some people have this mentality that the police are going to fucking deputize them because they see they have a gun on them. No. They're going to tell you to leave, or worse, you will die.
Yeah, it's like,
Mhm.
guess what? Cops in general aren't a big fan of vigilantes.
Yeah.
Like, especially since these
Hence,
events
hence
tend-
being against the law, like it is.
yeah, it's like, yeah, they're gonna probably perceive you as a threat
Yeah.
because guess what? There's no actual white hats and black hats.
Yeah. For
No.
all they know, you're working with the guy inside there.
Yeah, it's like,
Mhm.
they don't know that you're a quote unquote good guy, so you're just a bad guy.
Yeah.
And
You
thus,
could just be
you're
saying a
just
good guy when you're actually working with them. They don't know.
Yeah, it's like, so, yeah, and you're liable to be, well, a dead guy.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, it truly is ridiculous. But I suppose, the thing about this, I'm not sure how many people actually believe this shit, or if it's the bullshit that they tell other people to, justify things. But I suppose it doesn't matter because the end result is the same.
Yeah.
Like, now.
The hyperbole train goes round and round.
Yeah, and you can do gun control without violating the Second Amendment. I mean, I suppose that is something that outsiders just don't understand. And the Second Amendment really wasn't about firearms. That was about militias.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah, they
Which
always
militias do need to have firearms usually, but it's not just a bunch of people who own firearms.
The need for Minutemen evaporated the instant we founded a standing army.
right. But
The Second
here's
Amendment is obsolete from that standard. It was never created for insurrection against the government in spite of the mental masturbation exercises of our so-called founding fathers.
Right. Well, it's like, well, that's just another one of the great hypocrisies. The fucking worshippers of original constitutional intent have warped and distorted the Second Amendment beyond the pale, because what the founding fathers intended with the Second Amendment is immaterial. What actually matters is what the current interpretation of the Second Amendment is.
Which is the interpretation is basically the right to own guns shall not be abridged.
Right. And that kind of thing is enforced with the Supreme Courts. Like, so you would need you need gun laws that can withstand judicial review. That is something we have that other countries do not. Fair or not, like, when people bring up, the Australian massacre that happened in the 90s, and they managed to ban guns. Well, that's a thing that they could just do. Granted, it took a lot of political willpower and capital and all that stuff. It wasn't easy. Australia had its own gun lobby and all that stuff, but they did it. But when it happened, it could be allowed because there is no highest law in the land that allows people the actual right to own a gun. Ditto the UK, Canada, Japan. Like, we are the only country who has this.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's like, it would be nice if that changed, but like I said, the way you go about changing that is, you either change it with a constitutional amendment,
Which,
which is really fucking hard. Like, you need, not just both the House and the Senate, you need 2/3 of the states.
Yeah, you need a supermajority in both houses of Congress, and then you need to get 2/3 of
You
the states
actually
to
need
ratify
three
it.
quarters. You need
Three
three-quarters
quarters,
of the
right.
states. It's 37 states to pass a constitutional
So a
amendment.
super duper majority.
Which is why we only have 27 amendments. Now, and I saw
The Constitution was very, very, very carefully crafted to both be definitely possible to change and also very difficult to change.
Yeah, it's like, certain aspects being very obtuse and difficult. That's not a bug, that's a feature. Like, because, being very easy to change the Constitution has its own problems.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, then you'd have sweeping changes to the Constitution, redefining it every time there's a wind change in politics. So
Right.
you can't have that. There is some other problems, and this is where we were talking about. This is where I was talking about the economics of it. There was an interesting article that talked about this extensively, where they said that the framers of the Constitution also really didn't have it within their ken to perceive that so much material wealth would be consolidated into the hands of a few. When they wrote the Constitution, a lot of the people that they considered citizens, which has its own problems in definition, but with a lot of the people they considered citizens were minor landowners and sharecroppers who didn't have a lot of contact with each other. There wasn't a central bank. There wasn't a lot of things that allow people to consolidate wealth and power quickly. So
also,
the
I'm
question,
pretty sure that at that point there was literally.
Yeah, I disagree on that note, that they couldn't envision consolidation of wealth. Maybe not on the scale of what we got now, but what the founding fathers actually wanted for this nation was that very thing. They didn't want the fucking common people voting. They wanted the government, they wanted everything to be in the hands of the landed gentry, property owners, which, was a lot less than it was in the late 18th century than it is now. They were very much for a government of the elites, because guess what? Democracy scared the shit out of them.
and most pure democracies failed rather quickly because of mob rule.
Right, and even the Roman Empire scared them, because the Roman Empire the Roman Republic descended into empire and dictatorships and all that stuff. That's why they didn't really trust the populace at large. That's why voting was so restricted back in the day. Like, it wasn't just white male people who were the only ones who could vote, say in the 18th century. Although even that's kind of messy, because, like, for example, black people could vote. Not many, but voting back then was based off of property more than anything else. And so
there were black people who owned property, particularly in certain cities in the north.
Right, and they could actually vote. So that's some of the stuff that has changed. Anyway, and getting back to
Sorry, I was just thinking of that terrible line in the 3rd season of Archer where he says your 3/5 of an opinion has been noted.
Yeah.
Sorry. Oh man.
Yes, Archer is a good series. But
rather politically astute.
Yeah. I suppose the easier way to change the gun laws is to have gun laws that can withstand a Second Amendment challenge. It's not going to be as effective as, say, being able to overturn the Second Amendment, but it's more practical than overturning the Second Amendment. Like,
oh God,
it's like, that's. I guess it's not technically impossible, but it's so untenable on so many levels that I just can't imagine it ever happening.
Yeah.
Not here. Like, I'm like, and that's not to say that the gun lobby can't be eventually beaten. Even though, they have a lot of power, they have a lot of advocates. I'm like, but for example, smoking, had all of that, and they were defeated. Lead, not a lot of people know the story about the fight over lead and gasoline.
Right.
You know,
I saw that on that was actually covered on Cosmos, the new Cosmos.
Yeah, yeah, and you know,
But
that,
if we don't put lead in gasoline, where are we going to put all of this lead?
yeah, I'm like,
I don't think that was actually the argument, but okay.
well, I think it was because it was catalyst or something like that.
Right.
But
Well, it reduced noise from internal combustion engines, and you have to do some significant engineering in order to make a quiet engine
right,
that doesn't have lead in the gasoline.
you know,
Mhm.
and I could go on this, but I mean, it
Right.
is just, but the distressing thing is gun ownership, gun control. It's probably the only major social issue that has leaned rightward since the 60s. You know, everything else trends leftward.
Hmm.
Yeah.
There was a great line in the chat here from Chaos Lab. He says, I like the idea of something new, Democracy 2.0 with an SHA-3 blockchain that represents all citizens that use it, not just a tiny sliver of the populace. Decentralized democratic process.
Would
Yeah.
be nice if
Programming humor.
Well, and in the case of gun control, it is tyranny by the minority. Like 22 or 23% of the populace owns over half the guns. Like a lot of people, like a lot of people, like I think 70% don't own guns or anything like that. Like there are
yeah,
a lot
but the
that-
people who do own guns keep buying more and more of them.
yeah, that's the problem, and you know, and gun advocates are really fucking motivated. You know, it's like that's kind of the thing that gun control advocates have to be like. You know, it's one thing to have the debate over and over again after a tragedy. You know, it's it kind of has to be there next week, the week after. You know, people have to go fucking protest in the streets and vote in these issues if things are ever going to actually change. Because what amounts to complaining about it and then I don't know, moving on to something else, or agreeing with the gun advocates, saying that this isn't the time to talk about this. Motherfucker, it's never a good time.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's like I said
Well,
last week.
that's the thing. That's the thing. They have two modes on this. One is you can't talk about this right now. Emotions are too high, and then when emotions aren't too high, we shouldn't talk about that right now. There are more important things to do.
Well, it's like I said last week. It's an easy position for the privileged to take to say it's not the appropriate time. And that's the only reason that they say that is because it makes them uncomfortable. It's like, well, when it makes you uncomfortable, that means the protest is working.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
We need to keep, but the problem is, as it seems as a nation, the vast majority of us have forgotten how to press the issue. Like they have them against the ropes, and instead of doing a full court press, they back off and say, "Well, okay, we made our point," and that's sometimes not enough.
I do get the sense that we are getting more sick and tired of the nothing happening. I mean, the fucking thoughts and prayers line has already entered.
I think there should be an algorithm that when somebody says thoughts and prayers on Twitter, they immediately get banned for 48 hours.
Like BoJack Horseman took the piss out of this phrase just last month. It's like it's something that these motherfuckers say just to alleviate themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like your
or
thoughts,
rather excuse themselves from actual responsibility.
Yeah, it's like your thoughts and prayers aren't stopping fucking bullets, now are they?
Yeah.
Nope. Unless you have telekinetic powers, like Jean Grey.
And in that case, carry on.
Then yes, we definitely want your thoughts and prayers. But yeah, it's a little absurd.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, we know your thoughts and prayers are there, but that's about all there is. Like,
Mhm.
it's like people want, actual things done because they're tired. People are getting tired of getting shot, and I'm like, the price of freedom. I mean, if we want to talk about hypocrisy, these are the same motherfuckers who think banning abortion will make abortion go away.
No, they'll just do it in unsafe ways.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No, they just want permission to execute people who commit an abortion. I guess that was what would be called under the law if they made it illegal. Which is its own hypocrisy.
Mm-hmm.
I'm aware, but
The previous episode of the Orville was kind of fun about that. Anytime you commit heresy, we'll just sentence you and then give you to the crowd to get the shit kicked out of you, because that's what everybody really wants is the blood sport.
I feel like letting the quote unquote pro-life side in the abortion debate have that name without any struggle over it. I mean,
Yeah.
I guess ultimately both sides sort of agreed to let the other one have the name they chose for themselves. But I think pro-life is a horrible misappropriation of what that position actually stands for.
Absolutely.
Well, because they care about
same
nothing
people-
other than the
It's
fetus.
pro-birth, I guess.
These are the same people that want to take away money from women's health, want to take hot lunches away from children in school, want to strip education from poor people, are pro-death penalty. You're not pro-life.
Mm.
Well, it pops out, and then all of a sudden, whoa, wow, fuck, babies are ugly, and they stink, and they poop a lot.
yeah,
Sometimes they vomit.
George Carlin had some great rants about these fuckers. If you're pre-life, you're fine. If you're preschool, you're fucked.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Oh man.
I suppose on that note, we should wrap up.
Yeah, let's do the wind down here. So, do we have any potentials lined up for next week?
Yes, let me go find it. I believe it is Chris Moore, aka Rowdy C.
Okay.
Adam can probably fill us in a little more on this one since he was recommended.
Yeah, he is the host of a number of series. His principal one is TV Trash, in which he looks at the worst of television.
Sounds like our kind of people.
Yeah, I mean, it's very Channel Awesome-esque. Except
Right.
not on Channel Awesome. Not from a lack of trying. He also does a wrestling show. I don't watch that one because I don't watch wrestling. So, but yeah, he's another content producer, and he's got a fairly unique focus. Like, I don't think I've encountered anyone else who covers bad TV outside of Brad occasionally.
All right. Well, that sounds interesting.
Uh-huh.
And is this a firm or is it a maybe?
I believe it's a firm. He told me he wanted next week's date, though he is on vacation until I believe this weekend. So
All right. I believe that's the one you mentioned last week, right?
yes.
Okay. All right. Well, otherwise, I think we had a pretty good talk here tonight. I'm sorry I was a little subdued here, but I've gotten so much of it on Facebook. I'm a little gun talked out.
Mm-hmm.
But it was still a necessary topic, I think. And since we didn't have anything really entertaining to talk about,
Yeah. To be
And it
fair, the
also-
entertainment part's been kind of dry unless we wanted to talk about anime.
yeah, well, I suppose I could have spent the entire episode talking about the Orville, which might actually have gotten us some views, but we'll have to save that for the news segment next week or something, especially after the Charlize Theron episode directed by Jonathan Frakes. I'm pretty excited about it.
That'll be
tomorrow night.
interesting to see.
Yeah, I may actually invest in Sling TV just so I can start watching it live now. But we'll see how that goes. Until next week, though, this is Back Paladin saying thanks for listening and stay safe out there, kids.